Welcome to Future Foodcast. I'm Pam Line-Miller, your host. I want to thank our sponsor, Farm to Plate. They're a software company committed to creating tomorrow's food business ecosystem today. I am excited to bring another innovative, interesting guest to the table today, literally to the desk, I guess I should say. Really talking about an area that we haven't talked a lot about before. I have Neil Dudley. He is the Vice President of Business Development for Pederson's Farms. Welcome to the podcast, Neil.
Thanks for having me, Pam. I really appreciate the audience. I love talking about bacon and all those things in between, really food production, animal agriculture, these kind of things, and your audience. Having the chance to speak to them and just tell them our story is really appreciated.
Yeah, I know they're going to really enjoy it. And I personally believe everything's better with bacon, Neil. So I'm excited to have.
I've got to tell you, my career is one of the luckiest for that one simple fact. I sell bacon, right? So I walk in, I say, I have bacon, and everybody says, okay, we'll take it. It's kind of unfair almost.
It's come on in, whatever you got. Well, yeah. Speaking of whatever you got, please, for our listeners who might not know, tell us about what you do there at Pederson's.
Sure. We're a vertically integrated animal agriculture, better for you processor. So we own a processing facility where we make bacon, sausage, ham. We also own farms. So we're in the game of farming. And that means we have some control of our quality, of the claims that we're able to raise our animals by. So everything we do has some third-party verified, humanely raised claim to go along with the animals. And our products strive really hard to just be minimal ingredients, like super healthy, super tasty, without a lot of what I say is unnecessary ingredients.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into that a little bit, because that's a really specialized niche that you're in, really all animal products, animal meat products, basically, all different varieties of that. But to make some decisions about how you're going to provide your product, minimally processed, I heard you say, without unnecessary additives. How did this mission even get started? Like, is this a need that you saw out there, or your company saw out there?
Yes. I came on to the company's been around for over 30 years. Okay. I've been working here for 20 years. So there was a 10-year span of its life that I wasn't a part of, but that was the really just getting it off the ground years of they were raising pigs. Whole Foods was starting to become a business at that time. So we started partnering with Whole Foods very synergistically, I guess I'd say, in their thoughts about animal agriculture and what we wanted to do, or the owners and the people in the business at that time. So that all just really married up really nicely. Then since I've been here, it's just been really a boom of consumers being more interested, more educated, more inclined to want the transparency of fully understanding where their food comes from. Matter of fact, Pederson's does a podcast too, and all we do is talk about where food comes from.
That's great.
Everything from the refrigeration guy that keeps our plant cool to the farmers that raise the pigs and everything in between.
Well, Neil, I think you're absolutely right. Consumers care that their food doesn't have unnecessary ingredients in it. Exactly what you're doing there at Pederson's Farms.
That's right. And I would say we're great market research to prove that. I mean, we've been in business for 30 years. I've been at the company for 20 years. I mean, I kind of feel sorry for everybody listening because I just repeated the same thing I said earlier. But what I mean is, it's obviously true that consumers are appreciating the things we do, or we wouldn't be in business anymore. We wouldn't be growing like we're growing. So we've timed our thought processes, our production practices, our team growth, all these things just perfectly in conjunction with consumers waking up and asking some more questions about where their food comes from. I think as a result of America doing well. I mean, we are doing well, although it may not feel like that all the time.
That's right. We are doing well. And one of the trends with those unnecessary ingredients, I cannot say that word today, is sugar. And I know you had mentioned Pederson's voluntarily took additional sugar out of your animal products on purpose, intentionally.
Yeah. Well, that's a great story. It's kind of a two-part origination. Like, who would have ever thought to take sugar out? It's what everybody wants. Wow, sugar's so good. Yay, it makes it taste good. That's such a flavorful product. Well, we had team members that were doing the paleo diet and CrossFit workouts. And I happen to have a dad who doesn't like sweet bacon. So he was eating other people's bacon and not ours. And I'm like, Dad, you can't do that. What's the problem? He's like, it's just too sweet. So we made a batch, 0 sugar. Turns out that was one of the best new products we've ever developed. It took our brand to places it would have never went otherwise. We got approved by Whole30, which is a 30-day diet reset that became really popular and works really well. And then just the paleo community, the ketogenic community, the carnivore community really like the things we do. So we try to be as valuable to those communities as we can.
Well, and it sounds like you really are. Now, to meet all the needs of those different communities, I mean, you mentioned earlier about refrigeration, that, you know, you have a perishable product. It's not a shelf-stable box of something that'll last, or a can of something that'll last for 3 or 4, or I don't know how many years some of those
totally
dates go. Yours is a fresher product. I imagine there are some challenges with getting your product to your consumer.
Absolutely. And it's logistics, it's timing. There with any kind of shelf refrigerated product that has a timeline ticking on it, like it's going to eventually perish, which is, I think, the food we should all be eating. Like, if it doesn't go bad, there's probably a reason. You know, you probably need to think about that for a minute, because most things God made that we eat and consume, they go bad if you don't eat them in the right amount of time. So you're just talking about logistic issues, and we do business all across the U.S. So we've got a very important team within our organization that's scheduling trucks weekly. We're shipping products from Maine to San Diego and Seattle to Miami. So we've got products going all those directions. That's a very intricate piece of the puzzle, but also we've got distribution facilities, production facilities. All these things are overseen by the U.S. government through the Department of Agriculture. And, you know, I just think that's one reason that everybody feels so kind of safe. Nobody necessarily walks to the grocery store and thinks this food's going to make me sick. And that's a very rare thing. If you're not American, you would understand that's not just that way everywhere. But we have that. So now we get to, as Americans, dig even deeper and say, okay, is this the ingredients I want to be feeding my family? Does this product relate to the lifestyle I want to be living and associated with? And long-winded answer, but that's what happens with refrigerated products.
Yeah. And once you get past that initial, is it safe, which, because we do have all kinds of controls in place here in the US, you do get to that. But you provide your products in stores like grocery stores or central places that people go. But you also have a pretty big e-commerce business, right?
Yes, ma'am. And thanks to, everybody says this, I guess I'll just say it because it's true. The pandemic sped that up for really the whole marketplace. Everybody needed to find, we were already in the e-commerce business, but once that kind of shut a lot of our movement around in society by kind of trying to keep social distancing and these things. Well, e-commerce, you mentioned that where we spend a little bit of attention on our e-commerce business, and I would say we spend a lot of attention on our e-commerce business thanks to the pandemic. And really everybody says this, the pandemic sped e-commerce up by 10x or something. And for our company, that's absolutely true. We were involved in e-commerce, but when that came, when that pandemic hit and everybody started social distancing, quit going to grocery stores, it just exponentially grew our consumer base, or at least, and I would say even our personal relationship with our consumers, because now they're coming right to us. We're able to service their needs, get it right to their house. And that's a fun thing to have, that relationship, because they'll tell you what you're doing wrong. And that's needed in a business. We appreciate that. Like, so consumers, if you're a consumer of any sort, a business should appreciate your honest feedback as to their performance in solving your problems. And we certainly do.
Well, I think that's true for any consumer goods that were on the market, and especially in a situation like yours. The pandemic was coming. Like you said, you had somewhat of e-commerce business established, but it went into hyperdrive because the volume went up just like a hockey stick when the pandemic hit and people were no longer going to grocery stores the way they used to. But one of the benefits of that is then that direct connection. Now you can hear from your customer, but you can also market to your customer. You can do some of those analytics. You know what they're buying, how often they're buying it, maybe how many people are in their family. You can target your marketing a little bit better. I would think from your perspective in business development, any food manufacturer would be really excited to have that direct connection with their consumer.
Yes, ma'am. If you're selling anything direct to consumer in any way, or if your ultimate pull through the market is the dinner table at home or end consumers in that regard, not just B2B, but you got like direct consumer interface,
right?
The closer you can get to that consumer experience, you're so much better off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you figured out, and then you had to change your logistical situation a little bit to not do as much to grocery stores, and it was getting spread out a little bit more across your customer base directly to your customers. So I know that presented itself with some new opportunities for Pederson's Farms, just like other companies were doing, and set all of those processes where you could establish how you were going to do that. Well, what else is happening over there at Pederson's Farms? Where are your manufacturing facilities?
We've got one manufacturing facility. It's in Central Texas.
Okay.
We've got a distribution center that's in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, kind of centrally located in a little town called Grand Prairie. It's just south of the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. So for anybody who knows that geography, they can kind of picture where our distribution center is. And then our farms are located up in the Midwest, the Chicago, Wisconsin area. It's kind of closer to the feed and better climate. Like it's 115 degrees right now in Texas, and pigs don't, let's say, thrive in those temperatures.
Right. That makes sense. But also now I understand the cowboy hat. So you're in Texas.
Yeah. Yes, perfect. Ma'am.
If you're watching us on YouTube instead of listening on the actual podcast channels, Neil's got this great cowboy hat on. He's just all decked out like a Texas cowboy. So it all fits the personality. But
there's a great story. Wait, I have to tell this story because in my early career, I didn't know any way to sell product other than to just get people to try it. Then they could know it was good. Then they might buy it. So I'm just going around to all the retailers I can that we're doing business with, and I'm doing product demonstrations. And when I was doing demos in LA, really all over the West Coast, I'd be serving bacon, and it seemed like about every other person would come along and say, I love your costume. That's just the greatest idea. It makes this experience so fun. And I just said, sure, great, awesome. I'll be back here next week. Come see me. But the facts were, I was just dressing how I dress every day. That was just
not a costume.
That's right. No costume. It was just me, which I think helps in selling anything. If you're just a genuine person being yourself, there's a certain amount of trust that can be conveyed between the people.
That's exactly right. And you don't want to steal their joy by telling them that you weren't wearing a costume. They were
and absolutely transparency. I guess in full transparency, I would tell most of them, it's not a costume. This is what I'm from Texas. This is how I dress. And then there was even more conversation to be had, an even deeper connection to be made with a potential customer.
And that's what it's about, making connections. Well, I don't want to leave here without covering something else that you talked about in the very beginning, which is some of the certifications and safety processes that you've had documented. And your company is really proactive with that. And that is a top concern and focus for what you do. Can you tell us a little bit about how you approach that?
Well, I guess if you're not growing, you're dying as a company. So that's kind of how we want to think about it. If we're not pushing ourselves to be more transparent, more real with our consumers, more attuned to what is a better, we only know what we know today. There's a good chance it's absolutely been true. Over 20 years, I've learned so much. And I look back at some of the thoughts I had 20 years ago. Wow, they were kind of wrong. Uh-oh, you mean I was wrong? Yes, totally. We get it wrong sometimes. We just have to get better. These third-party audits really help us with that. They're partners in our growth. And that's the way we perceive it anyway. It's the way we approach it. So safe quality food, SQF, that's a thing that really holds us accountable for having the processes and the plans in place to make sure our food is of the highest quality and highest safety. Now, this is above and beyond what the U.S. government does. So we've got an inspector in-house each and every day, keeping an eye on stuff, but we're going beyond that. We want to convey the most, confidence in our products as possible. So then we're a member of the Global Animal Food Partnership, which is known as GAP. That's our humane certification. They come check out whether or not our pigs have enough space. Are we raising them the way we say we're raising them? All these different things. We also work with Certified Humane and Non-GMO Project and PICO. There's so many different ones. And that was an advantage for us early on. We got used to audits. So anytime a big potential customer would say, will you go through an audit? We'd like to send people down and audit you. We're just like, bring them on. Like there's no chance they're going to audit something we aren't already being looked at for.
Right. And that gives your consumers a lot of confidence too, because as we talked about earlier, consumers care more now than maybe back when you were proactively doing those things as a company and not as many people were paying attention. Now more people are paying attention. So it's great that you're already conditioned that way, already set up that way, doing the right thing, trying to be proactive with those areas. I think that's great. I just wanted to highlight that for our listeners, because I think that is kind of a market differentiator for you as well.
100%. And when there's money involved, and there's always money involved, it removes the inclination of us as a company to stretch the truth or bend the truth, or, man, this is going to cost us another $10,000. Maybe we just won't do it this time, and we won't say we didn't do it. It takes that away. Now, we've got a third person that's totally unbiased. They really only care, are you doing what you say you do? And me, I think that really offers a great trust building presentation to consumers. We're not just saying it, we're letting other people look behind the curtain and see if we do what we say we do.
And that is key. That is key in today's market. Well, I love some of the things that we've talked about concerning Pederson's Farms and your approach to business with them. And so fun that you've been with them for over 20 years. So obviously it's a great place to work as well. And you're feeling like they're doing the right thing, your missions align and all of that. But is there anything else that you would like to leave with our audience today, Neil, before we go?
Well, just fair warning, you might want to cover yours because this is fixing to get loud, but this is our signature at Pederson's. We got bacon.
Okay. I can honestly say no one has ever done that on the podcast before. You heard it here first, listeners. It's just thank you, Neil, for sharing that with us. What a way to end a great podcast.
That whole thing actually spawned from me needing and wanting people to come try our products. We'd be to food shows and I'd get up in the chair and holler, Suey, we got bacon. And most people look at me like I'm crazy, and that's okay because I partly am. But all in all, it created an atmosphere around our booth and around our brand that said, we're going to be fun. We believe in what we're doing. And that's the great opportunity you're giving me with your audience to just say, we really believe in what we're doing. I'm proud of this thing here on my chest. This mirrored camera's got me messed up, but the logo on my chest is partly it's my legacy in a way. So I'm very proud of it, and I love sharing.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you sharing. And I know our sponsor, Farm to Plate, appreciates you sharing. They are enabling better food supply chain management. If you can find out more at farmtoplate.io. Neil, I want to thank you for being on the podcast with us today. Thanks so much.
Yeah, very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.